the okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so just to go over the objectives before Emily starts on the next slide. So the first part is the 5 stages of the fundraising cycle. So fundraising 101 is just really understanding that there are steps that you go through, and each step is important to understand in order to develop a strategy. Each step has key actions that have to be done, and there's time that needs to be spent at each step. The way we go through these steps for each funder will be different. So it's important to understand the steps and to be able to break it down also, so that within the organization, when you get people involved, you can get them involved at different stages, and people will be able to help you at different stages as well. Second part is to reflect and experiment. Basically, we would like to sort of have a sort of quick look at how you build a pitch, as I mentioned before. How are you going to diversify your funding base if you're not able to really convey to funders who are maybe less technical, but who may have an interest to invest in your project in an easy way to understand that their philanthropic investment will make an impact. The next point is about how can you find prospects? I think that's everybody's question here, is how do we diversify? How do we make sure that the funders, if they leave tomorrow, we have people in the background? And then also creating a stewardship plan. How do we keep these donors? How do we build this conversation and perhaps move from 1-year donations to multi-year, or getting them perhaps to even refer other funders? Okay, so let's start with the first parts, which are the 5 stages of the fundraising cycle. So I don't know if you have already seen this cycle. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. If not, then we'll just go through it. I'll give you the definition of each step, and then we'll dive a little bit more into what are the key elements for each of this stage. So basically, the fundraising cycle, it's all the steps that you need to go through, or you're doing it either organically or strategically, but you're going through all the steps to raise funds for your organizations. They are all very important to take into consideration so that you can act strategically, and actually so that you can define a strategy. So the first stage starts at the top, which is identification. So identification, it's about researching all the potential donors from various sources. So it's where you're looking at basically everything, like every type of organizations, whether they're foundations, companies, or international organizations, government, individuals, so all these different sources. Then you go through qualification, and that's where there's a lot of work to really select among all the identified prospects those who could potentially fund your activity or your organization based on matching criteria. So that's where you will really select some of them, because not all of them are appropriate or won't be interested in what you're doing or in your projects. The third stage is cultivation. So it's been mentioned already in your introduction. So it's how to build a relationship of trust with organizations or individual you would like to request funds from. So it's really how you are going to start a discussion, how you are going to catch the interest of the donors, so that potentially when you make an ask, then it's you have more chance to be successful. After the 3 steps, then you are finally reaching solicitation. So that's actually where you're asking money through different channels. So you have, of course, different way to request for funds depending on the type of donors that you're targeting. For example, if you're going to small donors, then maybe you can have a campaign on social media. If it's a foundation, most probably you will need to have a project proposal ready. So it's like all these different actions that you can do to request funds. And the last one is stewardship. So it's how you're going to retain your donors. So it's maintaining a relationship of trust and implement strategic action so that you can really retain your donor, keep them with you, so that in the end you don't have to go back to all the cycles again, but you can directly go to cultivations, because donors who are staying by your side, then it's just about, once the grant is over, it's about talking to them again and then making a new ask, and it's much more time saving than going through all the 5 steps. So this part is also very important. And when you're looking at all of this, then you can Develop a strategy. So the strategy will develop a set of coherent actions which take into considerations your resources, so whether they are time, financial resources, HR, but also the complexity of your environment and your goals, so that you can really define what are your objectives and the concrete actions that you'll need to put into place to reach your objectives. And we'll go to each of this phase. Abena, you're mute.
Sorry, yeah. So we thought in the time that we had here, we would put some what we consider to be game changers. I mean, there are other elements perhaps for others, but I think these are key. And we also wanted to be specific on the different types of donors. So in the identification phase, we think that what's important is you need to ensure you have a database to collect the relevant information. This is too often forgotten, because when you have one or two good funders that have been funding you for several years, I mean, it's easy to keep the data in a document somewhere or in your mind, or in separate places. But when you're really looking to diversify, you're going to have to broaden your perspective and look in several directions to collect the data in a way that you will be able to then use it afterwards. You need to be clear on the type of donors you wish to target. So as Emily mentioned in the strategy, not everybody's going to be looking for funds from high net worth individuals. One of you mentioned that in Singapore, there's not that much philanthropic interest in the work that they're doing there. I mean, perhaps building high net worth donors there will take longer, so maybe it won't be part of the strategy now, or it would be important to develop that because they're people that are going to influence policy or help you. Then what you need to do at this stage is actually spend time doing some outreach. So you really need to think, does it make sense? Also, we believe that we suggest that you should have several sources where you can find prospects. So, people in different countries will have different areas you can look. For local funders, you need to also think internationally. And we'll look at the different places where you can look for potential prospects. And also, it's really important to have sufficient prospects in your pipeline to ensure sustainability. Today, you may have X number of funders, they're with you, but you never know. It's a changing environment. People change their priorities or have limited amount of years as well that they fund, even if they fund for 5-6 years. You need to have other funders in your pipeline. And some people are lucky to have committed funders for 10 years, and that's great. But nonetheless, we really don't know, especially when it comes to government funding. Policies can change, and it can change quite quickly. Allocate sufficient time for the researching, because this takes time. So you'll need to think about resources in-house, or perhaps even think about interns or volunteers who could help you with this job. But you need to be clear for what you're looking for. And so to look at the specific donor types, we wanted to give one element per type. So institutional donors and private foundations. I should read there, sorry. The idea is to prioritize the projects for which you're looking for funding with clear budgets. So you need to make sure that the projects that you want to have funded are clear, that you're able to write impactful grants. And also talking about budgets, if you're looking for multi-year funding, it's important to be able to project on these projects for over 2 or 3 years, which is not always the case for certain people. With high net worth individuals, really check that you have access to this type of donor. Check with your network, check with your board before you say, hey, this is a great idea. What is the feasibility that we can actually reach out to these people in the desired time frame that you're looking to raise funds? Small donations, we would say, define the personalities of your donors you're approaching. So if you're looking for small donations, you're saying, okay, we think that it's the young children, young people, young adults from, 20 to 25 years, because they're very active in the environment today. And this is the type of donors we're going for, and see how you're going to access them. Think about the how as well, where you find them and how.
Okay, so the second step is qualification. Some of the key game changers that we'll list it for you, or look for the right information. So that's really the part where you're going to select the ones that really match with your project or your activities. So when we look for the right information, it's really looking into the geographical reach, what is their mission, what is the type of organization they support. Sometimes some of them are requesting for a certain amount of the annual budget, otherwise you're too small, or others prefer to fund small ones. So then you need to look that you're not too big for them. So it's really looking into all these criteria that you can find on the website, or you can also reach out to them and call and ask all the questions that you have to make sure that what you're doing or the project that you'd like to propose is perfectly aligned, so that you don't waste time writing a request and a proposal if actually you've missed that, for example, they're not active in Singapore. The second point is to narrow down your prospects, to prioritize the ones that are most aligned with your mission. The third point is allocate the prospects to the best suited projects. So it's really to look into what are all the projects that you need to fund, and try to dispatch or organize all your prospects, saying, okay, maybe this one will be more appropriate for this project, and make sure that you have enough prospects for each of your projects, enough qualified prospects for each of your projects. Have a timeline and objective. How many prospects do you want to qualify and solicit per month? So that's always good in terms of how to move forward with fundraising, because sometimes it stays a little bit on the side. And then when we realize that we need some funds, then let's do some fundraising. So it's more about being a bit more strategic. Even if you don't do lots of them per month or per week, that's fine, but actually try to have some objectives. And ensure you have sufficient prospects to increase your chance of full funding of your project. So mix cold contact and direct contacts if possible. So it's really about diversifying. It's the different type of prospect, the different type of donors, but also diversifying in the sense that if you only send, I don't know, 2 requests for one project, then it's, the conversion rate is usually quite low. So you need to actually send much more requests to ensure that you get the sufficient funding for your project. So just keep that in mind. And donor specific. So for institutional donors and private foundations, make sure the donor criteria really match with your project. So that's what I was talking about in the first for the first point. High net worth individual, ensure that the prospect has the wealth, a known connection to the cause, and that you actually have access to them. So that's really a specific target where you need to make sure that you actually have someone who can introduce you, or you have a way to find a contact. And small donations, you will need to build your community step by step. So to get small donation, it's really important to gather people around you, to interact with them, and have at least a base for a community, so that then you can, in the end, ask for funds and have a bit more chance to raise money. I see there is a raised hand. So shall we take the question now, or in the end of the? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's me. Hi. I just wanted to, sorry if this is not a very clever question, so I have to preface that. You mentioned sort of cold canvassing, essentially, of potential donors. How effective is it to do that? Because based on what I've seen with my organization, it's always been sort of an introduction. So is someone recommending the funder and things like that. How effective is approaching someone who absolutely has no idea who you are, and how effective is that as a methodology of seeking funding? Mm-hmm. I think that's my question.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. It actually works as well. So of course, the conversion rate will be higher if you have a direct contact and someone who can introduce you, because you have the chance to talk to the people directly, maybe to have a meeting, explain what you're doing in person. So when you are reaching to cold contacts, always try to see whether that's possible to actually talk to them first. Sometimes it's not. But then it will be the quality and the solidity of your project proposal, if it's a foundation, for example, will be key to really show like all the very important aspect, and try to convince by writing. So it's like how to convince by writing and not by speaking to the person. So, but that works as well. We have many clients where we're sending proposal to cold prospects, and that works. Yes, there is. I hope that answers the question. Okay, and this second question.
Yes, I just would like to ask you, uh, since our organization is new, so relatively new, then we don't have any, let's say, track record to show off to potential funder. How could or what kind of strategy that we could, let's say, put in order to get attention from such a funder?
Mhm. So you said you don't have a record to show to donors, right?
I mean, we are a new organization, less than a year. So within this, let's say, 2 years and so, or let's say in the next year, we will not make much, let's say, success. I guess so. Then how can we attract a funder to support us?
Yeah. So there are probably different ways, but the how I would do it is really to emphasize what is the problem and really show what is your methodology. So you have to be very clear and very precise on, okay, we've seen this very specific problems. This is our added value. This is what we're going to do that maybe other organizations are not doing. So what is your added value? What is what we say in sales is your unique selling point, and really what is your methodology? So it's to show that you've thought, you really took time to think about what is the problem and how you're going to solve it, and what is the methodology that you propose and why you think it's going to have an impact.
And I would add as well to that the expected results and how you're going to quantify those. I think it's going to be key also to demonstrate that you're going to have results, and then how are you actually going to collect this information and demonstrate it.
Thank you.
Welcome. Let's have the third question, and then maybe we move forward and list the others for the end of the seminar. But please go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't see the name because I'm sharing my screen. Julia.
Yeah, it's just actually a comment for Paul, something that seems to have worked well for us because we're also fairly recent and we're in a similar position the first time that we made applications, was also to show through our board that we have the expertise and the means to tackle that problem. So that is not just like, I see that this is a problem and this might be a solution, but actually I have the expertise in my organization to be the one that implements that solution. So that has proved helpful for us. So it was just something they want to emphasize.
Okay, cultivation. So what we suggest is here, where possible, try to have a personal contact. So this comes to the point, cold and direct contact. Of course, a person in front of you is always the best option. When it's not, there are other strategies to put into place. So try and have a person in front of you. In the case, for example, foundations, when we're sending out cold requests, before doing so, already make sure you list the board members on this foundation and look within your network. Maybe I don't personally know them, but perhaps somebody in my network could give us that introduction. Otherwise, their phone numbers, try and have a conversation and call. Mobilize your network, as I mentioned just now, your board, your staff members to make the introductions. Make sure you have a convincing pitch ready, verbal and written. So that's really, really key. Make sure, we'll look at the pitch afterwards, that your pitch is really addressed to the people in front. In technical, as I mentioned, working with Human Rights Watch, some terms are very legal, very technical, and it's great when you're talking to your peers, but when you go outside of that realm, it can become a bit confusing. And there are elements that are key that we'll look at afterwards. Keep in mind the relational approach. So yeah, we really believe that it's important to create a relationship, to know that the funder in front is actually looking for, return on philanthropic investment, and it's about feelings as well, emotions. It's not just a bank where you're getting money. Philanthropy is becoming more and more sophisticated, as you all know. So cultivation, another thing is how do, Danielle mentioned, so how do I really, build this relationship? It can take 18 months. One would say really have patience and use this opportunity to understand the funder's objectives and to build trust and credibility. So in the qualification phase, we're looking, okay, are they aligned with us? In the cultivation phase is really, am I aligned without losing my values? How do I bring out these elements that are speaking to this funder's objectives? Because they have objectives. They want to achieve a certain number of things. They have statutes in their foundations that they have to fill. So in fact, when you come, it's matching, it's being able to match that. So yeah, I think that's really key. You need the patience to go through it. So for institutional donors, as I mentioned before, even if the application process is clear, always try to talk to them before applying. Before you apply, sometimes it's not clear how much the funder has the capacity to give. So if you can have this call, that's always a question that we try to ask. They don't always say it, but you can say, well, what is the range? Do you do multi-year funding? Some of these elements that are important in order to before applying. With high net worth individuals, we say carefully plan the opportunities to gain with your prospective donors to share your impact. And you need to do the storytelling. And also make sure that you're clear on your needs. And I think this is important. It's about planning these engagements. What are these opportunities that I have to meet? So there are spontaneous opportunities, but there may be within your organization times when you say, okay, we're going to organize a webinar, a webinar to talk about a specific theme, and I'm going to invite a few high net worth individuals. Okay, in March, I'm going to go and meet this person, or we're going to do a breakfast. You really need to plan these cultivation moments. Being spontaneous won't be sufficient. And if you have several, you need to see who within the organization is the appropriate person to have this conversation. And you may want to do it in phases. So, for example, you would go visit a high net worth individual. Maybe the fundraiser will go at first, and then after you'll go as well with a researcher or maybe the CEO. So it's also using the different people to bring new information, to bring new perspectives on your organization, to show who are within the organization if you're several. If not, it's also perhaps showing different areas of what you're doing. So that would be a recommendation. For small donations, here planned communication will be key to create a successful conversion circle. So tunnel, sorry. This is, again, strategic and very in line with your communication plan. So you'll need to do this in a meticulous and planned way. It's not something that would just happen by itself. It can be a very good base and of unrestricted, undesignated funds, but it needs to be planned.
Okay, so solicitation now. So you're actually getting to the step where you can request funds finally. So first point is ensure you strictly follow the funder's application requirements. So I've been in the side of the donor selecting requests for fundings, and honestly, there is nothing more annoying than receiving applications that are not complete or that do not answer some of the specific questions properly. So it's really about paying attention to details, because you can make sure that people receive so many requests that if yours is not perfect, then even if the content can be interesting for the donor, then you can be sure yours will be put aside. Have all your required documents ready and updated in one file to save time. So you do not forget as well to send all the annexes and required documents that they request. It's easier to have everything in one file. So your constitutions, your audited annual report, audited financials, annual reports, like basically everything that is usually requested, have that and just update it once per year, so that once you're preparing a request, then you have all of this. You don't need to look for these documents. Make sure you have a funding strategy for each of your projects to share in your application. So funding strategy, it's a funding plan. It's not a fundraising strategy. It's different. It's really a funding plan. So if you're presenting a project, it's to make sure that you thought about who you're going to approach and how much you're going to ask. So it's kind of a short table where you're saying, okay, we've asked to this foundation, the status is pending, and we've requested, I don't know, for $50,000. Then we will have private funds, and we have this amount, and that's the status is confirmed, and so on, so that you can really show that you thought about how you're going to fund your project. As much as possible, be creative in writing your project proposal. Make it stand out. So it's just horrible to receive requests and just see like this Word document with lots of text, especially in field where it might be very scientific, very technical terms and texts. So try to make it nice to read. Like if you open the document, would you want to spend time reading it if it's like just text packed together, and there is, you know, no paragraphs, no titles, subtitles, no pictures. So try to make it stand out. Be timely, of course, especially if there are deadlines to apply, and make sure to ask for the right amount. This is something that you can, it's an information that we don't have all of the time, but it's something that you can find. And even sometimes if you manage to talk to the donor, you can also ask, you know, what is the average, what are the, you know, expectations in terms of amount requested and so on, so that you're sure that you're not asking either too much or not enough. So for institutional donors, combine cold solicitation with personal introductions for best chances of success. So we've talked about that as well. High net worth individual, use the appropriate solicitation method and be timely. So with the high net worth individual, it's much difficult to appreciate whether you should go with an event, with the writing, with inviting this person over, I don't know, over lunch or in your office, and then make an ask directly. So try to feel the person, try to see what would be the best appropriate. And for small donations, have clear price points, demonstrate the value of the donation. So when you have, for example, a campaign to try to raise small donations, try to be convincing, of course, with your message, the message that you will convey, and give precisely like examples of, okay, with $20, this is what we could do, for example, so that it gives a clear picture of what would be the impact of the donation.
So for stewardship, now you've received this donation, you're very happy. So we say, so really make sure you thank, recognize new and existing donors in a timely and appropriate manner. So that's really important. So we said we move away from the transactional to the relational approach. In front of us, we have people. Ensure you fulfill all the aspects of the funding agreement. So if it's a formal agreement, make sure that that is really planned within, you know, moving forward. The reporting should be planned within your actions, resources should be allocated for that. And once you get the funds, it's also the time to perhaps double check with certain people on the expectations. Have a donor follow-up tool with deadlines to respect. So it's really key to be able to have processes in place in order to make sure that you're doing the correct stewardship for each donor type. Be transparent with your donors, even when you're facing challenges. It's an opportunity to have conversations with them, and to have a stewardship plan, which is necessary for all donors. And we'll look at the stewardship plan. So Alex asked, what is a donor follow-up to? So a donor follow-up to can be, well, we customize one that we make for ourselves. It's just, and he mentioned as well, is that it's a type of document where you put the name of the donor, how much they gave you, when you need to be reporting back to them, any comments. So it's a document that has all the information of your donors and what needs to be done with these formal grants. I hope I've answered that question. Okay. Is that okay, Alex? Okay. So for specific tips, we already said it. Again, respect the deadlines for reporting and inform them of the challenges you face. Make sure that your budgets are aligned. You know, I think that's something that when you're in at the initial phase, when you're creating your projects, you're sending out certain types of budget. Make sure that you can reconcile them easily with your financials. So with high net worth individuals, check with what their expectations are and how often they want to be informed, and personalize your approach. I think we could also, when we talk about high net worth individuals, you could also compare that with certain private foundations, because you're also talking to philanthropists often. So really, you know, if it's not formal, make sure that you know, how would you like to be communicated with? Is it by email? Do you want a call? You know, some of these people are often solicited, so maybe they just prefer a one meeting per day. Take this time to ask them. Small donations, a general newsletter is key to keep your donors informed and engaged. So we really try to emphasize that when you have small donations, they're not less important, these people and types of donors, but this type of funding, it should be as automated as possible. You know, you could, nowadays we have these emailing that goes out and that you can put dear John, dear Mr. That's the level of personalization that you will do, but it should be planned during the year, again with your communication plan, and not spending hours, following up on this. And this is this good basis that gives you the security of small donations. It's the volume that's going to be interesting and how efficient you are to process.
Okay, so let's move to the second part now, which is how to build a successful pitch. So we'll give you a little bit of a theory so that you can have at least the structure of a pitch. And then we'll take a few minutes so that you can think about one of the three parts at least, so that we can share some ideas. So the pitch is very, very short. It's something that you'll have to do in about 1 minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes maximum. And so it's really, what are you saying to make an impact, to create curiosity to the people you're talking to and be convincing. So the pitch has three parts. You have the first one, which is a catchphrase. So it's about 10-15 seconds. And this is where you capture the attention. So you don't waste too much time, but you need to, for example, give shocking facts, give the statistics, ask questions. So you make a solid introduction that indicates who you are, the value of your work, and your impact. You find a balance to remain convincing while not overloading your interlocutor, and you briefly describe the organization. But the most important in that is that it will start really with something that, catch the attention, catch the interest. It's really a catchphrase. That's why it's called like that. So emphasize your worth. Then you have the body. So this is where you will really develop your argument. So it's a little bit longer, about 30 to 60 seconds. And this is where you will prove your worth. So we were talking just before about the unique selling point, which is the unique value proposition as well. It's what makes you different. How do you think, what makes you able to, solve this specific problem, or have a methodology that will bring a change, that will have an impact in the world. So develop your pitch thinking about what makes your nonprofit organization different from the others. How effective are you? Do you have any impact stories that are incredible? What are you, or if you're new, what are you preparing to accomplish in the future? So this is really the part where you need to prove your impact, or how you're going to have an impact if you're a quite new organization. Then you have the conclusion. So it's short as well, 15-20 seconds, and you make a very specific request. So of course you can have one pitch as a base, but depending on the conclusion that you will have, depending also on the person you will talk to, whether it's a foundation, whether it's just a potential high net worth individual at an event, whether this is just your neighbor, you will adapt the structure of the pitch, so your catchphrase, your body, depending on the type of donor or people you're talking to, and depending on the conclusion as well. So some examples for the conclusions are: match the donations for your next campaign. Would you register as a peer-to-peer fundraiser? Would you join our newsletter? Would you make a donation, etc., etc. So as I was saying, your request shapes the tone of your pitch, and several pitch variations are possible. So it looks quite simple when you look at it like that, but it's actually a pretty hard exercise. It's something that you need to work on again and again, and to practice, test it with your friends, with your family, neighbor, to make sure that it has an impact and that it's convincing. So we wanted to take a little bit of time on this, actually, and propose you to prepare either a catchphrase, either a body, or a conclusion. So what could you say about your organization? Or you could also choose one of your specific program, but you could also do it for the whole organization. So what would be a catchphrase that you could use, or a body, or a conclusion? So we're not make you do the whole pitch now because we don't have enough time, but at least if you can work on one of the parts, so that we can share some of the ideas right after. So maybe I leave you about 5 minutes, and then we can share, like, if some of you want to share the ideas or the part he or she has been working on, then maybe it will inspire others as well. Is it clear for everybody? Otherwise, just let me know if you have a question, and we'll just leave you 5 minutes.
I will just add with regard to the conclusion. When you're thinking about the conclusion, it's your objective. What do you want the person to do? This pitch, when it's delivered, it's really what is your objective? And it comes back to the question of this, for example, cultivation. Do I want to get another opportunity to deepen the relationship? Do I want to ask for money? Which area am I in the phase of the fundraising? That's just to come back to Danielle's question on cultivation and how you can engage with people. The pitches can be used for these for different purposes. And also, for example, do I want to talk about, give an interest at an event, for example? I've been invited to talk about the climate, and at the end I want to give a pitch and then ask something specific, join my newsletter. It's great to have this pitch, for example.
So maybe just 1-2 minutes to finalize. Okay, so who would like, so we know it's not a lot of time. Of course, you would need much more time to prepare a whole pitch, but at least we can exchange some ideas. So who would be a motivated volunteer to share what you have written or thought about? And please let us know first if this is your catchphrase, your body, or conclusion. We'll just need like 1 or 2 strong, motivated people.
Alex is Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go. I'm not sure if this is right, but I'll give it a go. I'm doing the start, the catchphrase. Gosh, it might be longer than that. Anyway, okay, shall I go?
Sure, go ahead.
Active Asia is training community organisers and campaigners. Our plan is to coach and train 250 people this year, 500 the next year, and so on. And with those skills, our network will become stronger, smarter, and more able to build powerful campaigns to fight injustice. But time is against them. As wealthy countries have shut the door to new coal, sites have turned to Asia as the final frontier for expansion. People who come to our workshop are in a battle to stop the expansion of big coal into their homelands, which, if becomes reality, will tip the planet into irreversible climate change. So we must turn the tide. The only thing that can defeat organised money is organised people. But to organise, we need powerful campaign strategies that can beat big coal. To build those strategies, we need to train more people. That's where you come in.
Okay.
Very long.
Yes. Was that the catchphrase?
Yeah, it's too long, I think.
Emilie, do you want to go?
Yeah. So there's lots of very interesting things and very good elements. For me, that would be probably much more the body than the catchphrase.
Okay.
Because you're like giving the whole, how effective you are, and then like everything, and you even have like the conclusion in the end. So it was almost kind of a complete pitch. Just probably a few things could be added. In terms of the catchphrase, I was not sure at the beginning what, because if I don't know you, I was not sure what you were talking about. So what was the, right away, what is the topic? And there was probably something missing. So for the catchphrase again, about on how to attract curiosity, something that is a bit like, wow, okay, now I'm listening, because what you're saying, it's like, it strikes me. But probably for the rest, like for the body and conclusion, it could be great. So you actually did 2/3 of the work.
Yeah. If I could just add as well, Alex, I think you mentioned something that was really key that would be great for your catchphrase. You were talking about, I didn't catch all of it because there were a lot of information, but about the wealthy countries that are polluting with cold, sort of, did you know that in XY year, if we don't do anything, this is what's going to happen? There's a sense of emergency, and it quickly tells people what you're doing. And it sort of, vibrates with the emotion. It's about catching either shocking facts or if we don't do this, this is what will happen. Statistics, did you know, question. Get people to sort of thought-provoking at that moment there. And I totally agree with Emilie. There's a lot of elements that you could put in the different phases. And if you think about each phase, making sure that you isolate the different information you want and have one element in the body, I would say 1 or 2 points, not more, because too much information, you will lose the person in front. Then they can ask questions, and then you can be giving the information. But I agree, there's a lot of good content there that can be reorganized, reworked, and used for perhaps different pitches as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for jumping in. And Daniel?
Yes, it's also a catchphrase. We help nonprofits build impactful organizations. In our approach, it's always you in the driving seat, not your funder. You choose the priority, you choose the consultant, you choose the timing, and you choose the level of involvement. That's it.
Yeah. I would say, you want to go? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I would say great, but again, you're informing. It's you're giving the information. This moment you want to catch my attention. Why would I be interested in you? Why am I suddenly in the driving seat? Is there a problem? Why am I not? Or perhaps, it would be like, all too often you're not in the driver's seat. Or all too often you don't have access to funders, or something that says, okay, this guy's got a solution for me. I'm going to listen in, or,
Yeah, I agree with Abena.
Yeah, or something like philanthropy is changing today. Organizations need, this bridge between funders and your organization, the voice, the connection, the synergies, the mutualization, and things like that.
Or do you know how many organizations have to shut down every year, or drop their activities, or stop a project because and then they're like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And last one. So sorry, I don't see the names, but go ahead. I know, I remember you're from the Netherlands, but I don't see the names because I'm sharing my screen. So Joel. Okay, sorry.
Okay, thanks for that. Wasn't sure if it was.
So.
Thanks. Wasn't sure it was my turn. Here we go. So the Centre for Climate Crime Analysis, CCCA, prosecutes climate crime. Our prosecutors and investigators measure the extent of the climate crime. They identify the major players who contribute to the crime, and we partner with local actors to scale up litigation. Did you know that 95% of the trees cut down in the Amazon is done so illegally? That's as far as I got with catchphrase.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I would really add your last sentence, the question at the beginning.
Yeah.
That would really totally change the impact. And probably if you have that first and then the presentation that you have, then you have a kind of a strong catchphrase already.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Can I give another try?
Sorry, I was going to, if I may just say, Joel, I had no idea. So thank you very much for informing me. No idea.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Sorry, there's Paul as well that would like to try.
Oh, I don't see.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you don't see the screen.
Yeah.
Yes, I will try. I'm Paul Buta representing Indonesia Research Institute for Decarbonization. We are a think tank that focuses the work on decarbonizing the economy. Currently, our focus is on the energy sector. We are now working on supporting government in preparing regulation on carbon pricing and providing capacity building to government and private sectors. We are in the opinion that introduction of carbon pricing will help to decarbonize the energy sector in Indonesia, which are still relying very much on the fossil-based energy. Having carbon pricing implemented in Indonesia, we are convinced that the net zero emission target of Indonesia can be met in 2060 or earlier and help to stop the coal-fired power plants. We will be happy if you could support us in implementing this program. That's it.
Okay. So that was the whole pitch.
Yes.
Okay. So you had time to work on it all. Okay. So I don't. Again, there's lots of interesting things. I think in terms of the body, there is the conclusion that you have, which is quite clear. So that's good. I can't remember so listening to all the rest of the pitch, I can't remember the beginning. So probably the catchphrase was not catchy enough.
Okay.
So it needs something a bit stronger for the beginning. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you for inputs.
Thank you, Paul. I would like to add as well. I think there's a lot of great information, maybe too much information, that the feeling for the person in front is that, what am I going back? What have I kept? And there are two main things that I've kept, which I think are key. Perhaps that got my attention. It could be different for somebody else, but you talked about something in 2060. So there's a deadline there. There's something going on in 2060, and I'd like to know, about that. And I think it's about reaching a goal. And perhaps you could talk about what would happen if we don't reach this goal. What would happen if we don't do this work, or how we're contributing to this important goal, which is perhaps, so that I really I kept as well. Another thing is it's about the collective, as you were talking about the Asian collective. What is it? What are you doing? What expertise do you have? How is your organization different? How are you contributing to this work? I'd like to know more, how you're making a difference as an organization or as experts, perhaps. So there's an interest, but I was sort of like, okay, so it's good what you're doing, but what is it that you're bringing to the table? Who, are there people in your organizations that you want to put to the forefront? Do you want to, so that's what I kept, but there's a lot of great elements there. And this is why Emilie was saying we should try it, test it with different people, because we perceive information differently, and each person will perhaps give you a positive criticism that you could build on and sort of find something that's pretty solid.
And
thanks for the input.
For all of you who gave the kind of the content for the body, don't hesitate to use concrete examples. Give a picture of something that is real, so that it's easier for people to retain the information, to keep the information in mind. If it's just like facts and a presentation, then it kind of slips the mind at some point. But if you give a concrete example, we have, for example, I don't know, Thomas living in this country and blah, blah, blah. And so give concrete examples, it really helps. And we have a last, I don't know if it's a contribution or a question. Julia?
Yeah, I had written, funnily enough, also on our deforestation project. And I was wondering if I could just read what I wrote, because I think it will give an example of how two sort of pitches on the same topic and look very different. And I think it gives more of an example of what you were mentioning, if I understood correctly. So what I wrote is, Interpol has reported that about 90% of deforestation is linked to illegal activities. Our evidence collection and analysis methodology have allowed us to multiply the number of actions brought against slaughterhouses buying from illegally deforested areas in the Amazon. We've cut the timeline from years to barely a month for public authorities to impose fines in the order of millions of dollars against these companies. Will you help us protect other areas suffering deforestation by becoming our next donor?
Great.
Yeah. Interpol's good.
Give a bit of authority.
No, very, 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 yeah. Thank you very much.
It's short, it's straightforward. At the same time, we're like, oh my God, what? So that's very strong. Thank you for sharing.
If I could add something that you could give you some ideas as well, is if you go back to the structure of your project proposals when you write them, you can think about beneficiaries, the context. You talked about the context in which you're working, the statistics. You could think about, the results, impact, stories, testimonies, all these elements. And you could take some of these info and facts that you already have to build your projects. And this is, these could be basis for some of your pitches as well. And we haven't mentioned it here, but it's also how you're going to deliver. You know, what emotion are you giving? What is your body language? I mean, if you're talking, if it's an email, you could use this pitch as an introduction as well. But when you're talking, it's what is your body language? What are you giving out, and how much are you also passing on through your nonverbal communication as well?
That's
That's right. Okay. So yeah. So key elements. So you must know your pitch in depth and intimately. So practice aloud with different people, as we mentioned. Pay attention. Phrases or words you stumble over. So that's just general giving out a speech. The language used and the clarity of the wording. Sometimes we can take time for the catchphrase. People to really get, give a few seconds to sink in. Multiple lines, ideas, information that can be combined together. So am I saying the same thing twice? Can I just make one nice phrase from it? The elements of nonverbal, as I just mentioned. Learn to smile, make eye contact, use your hands. Although we had a workshop with different countries, and we also realized that the way messages are delivered are different in different regions and different countries. So maybe eye contact is not good in certain countries, or be aware of who you're talking to. Make it short and simple. People will ask you questions, adapt, and continuously develop your pitch. That's something you should have. And we didn't mention, but it could be used at most stages of the fundraising cycle. For example, when you're making that one call to qualify, you could use your pitch rather than spending 10 minutes saying, oh, this is what we do. You could just use this pitch to engage with the person on the phone, try to get up to the director. You could also, in the cultivation, it's definitely key. And it would help you to ask for several things with the cultivation. Make sure that when you're pitching, you always ask for a next meeting. So Danielle said, so how do I build on it? There's always something new. Can I send you an email? Should we meet in 6 months? How about I introduce you to, creating all these occasions. And obviously solicitation is another phase.
Okay, so thanks for your participation. Now we're moving to part 3. I think we'll go quite quickly over this part because you'll get the slides anyway. So this is where how to find new prospects. So when we're talking about channels for institutional donors, of course, you have different targets, foundations, company, public funds, etc. So for foundations, you may find, depending on the countries where you're located, a local list of foundations on the internet. For example, in Switzerland, we have 2-3 different websites that are listing foundations with the missions and so on. You can also ask your board, committees and network and benchmark similar organization. The good thing that you're part of a nonprofit builder is that you're all working on the same topic. It would be interesting, maybe probably for you also to save time to gather your research. Say some are going to research, I don't know, specific topic or specific areas. So that could be an idea also of mutualizing the work that you're all doing so that you can support each other. Companies, you have registries of commerce, social economic chambers. For public funds, you have embassies, government, regions, city, etc. So of course, all of that you need to do the research, Google, but at least that gives you a few tips on where to search. You have the UN agencies as well for institutional networks. You may have specific environmental networks, whether they're local or international. Personal networks, we'll talk about it, board members, local network, LinkedIn, and you have some websites where you can find calls for proposals. So maybe you've heard for funds for NGO, you may have emergency funds or websites of some government that are especially implicated in the causes of environment, or not that much, but they have large amounts of money and then they give for specific topics as well.
So channels for individual donors. So I think you'll have the list anyway, but it's the network, different types of network on internet, LinkedIn, Google, board members, commercial registers. In Switzerland, it's Money House, companies that have been created, who are the CEOs, who are the founders. Here, press, so we use Bilan Rich List, which is very Swiss-based. So you have the list of all the major high net worth individuals, Forbes Rich List. But bearing in mind, it's not because they're on the list that you have access to them. The strategy is really, do I have access? But then you could work through your network, people you know, to see whether you can get to these contacts. Okay. Yeah. So events. When you're invited to events, if you're invited to speak, if you're invited to contribute, always keep in mind, I have my pitch. Hey, what am I going to do? Can I get a call? Can I leave a card? Other people in your organization, get them involved if they're going out there. You know, they give you a card. Fundraising is an organization-wide job. It's not just one person that does it. Obviously, there's special events where you'll find high net worth individuals, your networks, and others. Okay, are there sources about ethical information, high net worth individuals? Okay, very good question. So this is first of all about the strategy of how you work. As I worked at Human Rights Watch, as you know, they do human rights work, advocating, and in different areas, business, child's rights, and health. They do get money from high net worths. It's about you having a policy on who you accept money for, how you do your due diligence, and that has to be established as an organization. But just generally as organizations like yours, when you're advocating, you need to anyway have a clear policy on your fundraising to make sure that even companies that you may go to, you need to draw the line somewhere. But we all know that, you know, it's quite difficult to be 100% ethical. Banks have money from people. So where do you draw the line, and how can you, when it comes out in the press, if you do have to deal with the reputational aspect, if it does ever come? So that's definitely something you need to ask yourself in your strategies. Networks, yeah, that's it. So we're a bit running late on time, so we're going to have to speed through, but you'll have these slides as well. So your prospects are everywhere. Every person in your organization and your network can and should help to identify. So if you have a board, if you're creating committees, they should help. It's, you know, one man cannot find billions just for one organization. Mm-hmm. And perhaps you can help yourselves.
Okay, so let's move to the last part, which is creating a stewardship plan now. So we've reached the last step of the fundraising cycle. And we're going to go through this. So the step one, so stewardship, just to remember, it's once you have received the donation. So it's what do you do then? So the first step will be, of course, the donation. Stewardship begins from the moment a donation is made to your organization. The type of donor and the amount determines the strategy to be adopted. So of course, you will thank everybody, but not the same way. If someone is given, like, I don't know, $50,000 and someone's given $10, you have to thank everybody. This is important, but not in the same way. The second step is thank. So it's essential to thank personally and sincerely before going any further. It must actually be quite quick. So of course, it depends on the size of your organization. Usually, if you have at least a little bit of staff, we would request, we would say, like, in less than 48 hours. Of course, do your best, but at least don't wait like for, I don't know, 1 week, or sometimes in some organization that they wait for 1 month and then, oh, then we were going to thank all the people who gave last month. That's not really appropriate. The third step is confirm donors' expectation. So you should already have an idea of this. What are they expecting? But this is also the time where you need to discuss with them. So for example, if you're signing an agreement with the donor, most of the time everything will be written in. So we need a report in 6 months after the start of the project, 3 months after the end of the project, and so on. But this is also where you can really clarify, and especially with other types of targets, like, I don't know, companies or high net worth individuals, this is really where you need to discuss with them. Okay, how do you want us to communicate with you? What do you expect? Some will say, just drop me an email from time to time, like a short few lines saying how the project is going on. So really take time to clarify, because it will avoid like some trouble as well, or to have to manage like high expectations from people who would say, like, I don't know, they've given $500 and they would think they would have a like field visit or something. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but step 4 is recognize the donor properly. So according to the donor's expectation, but also to your own capacity and policy. So if you're a small team, you don't have lots of money, you're not going to invite like all your high net worth individuals for lunch and so on. So you really need to do stewardship actions that are appropriate for you, and some things that you can actually do. It doesn't have to take lots and lots and lots of time. You need to pick up wisely and strategically the actions that you will implement. So recognition can be public, name or logo in the annual report, Facebook post, etc. be careful that for any public recognition, you need the authorization of the donor. The fifth step is that show your impact. So whether it's written or oral, but it's about reporting. So donor will give you because you've managed to convince them, so they want to see the impact of their contribution, basically. So it can be in reports, it can be mass communication. So if you have a newsletter for your small donors, it could be oral conversation. You can invite for, let's have, a quick breakfast meeting where we'll update you about the project and so on. So this is really up to you and depending on your resources as well. And the final step that is also very, very important is once you go through all of this, the project is over, you have retain your donor, kept contact with him, nurture the relationship, ask again, cultivate again. So once your donor has been thanked and recognized, you recultivate it to secure a new donation. That's the point of stewardship, is really in the end to try to renew your donation again and again.
Okay, so quickly, so how to develop the stewardship plan? So it's something strategic that you need to think about. So we've outlined 4 steps. You should create a donor stewardship planning team. Okay, if you have a team, so people, it could be the communications, fundraising, project-based staff, because as you saw, you need to talk about the reporting, the finance. You need to come together, first of all. Segment your donors into categories or levels. So the segmentation of donors is very important for fundraising, for strategy anyway, so that's key. It's about deciding how you split your different donor groups. It could be either by amount given or donor type. So it could be major donors, or it could be foundations and corporate donors, or you would say everybody that gives X amount, or you could have a category, a major donor, and then within it, you have 2-3 sub-levels. I would say everybody that gave up to 5,000, I'll do this. Everybody that gave 5,000 and up, I'll do that. So this is strategic. It's part of a strategy. You need to spend time. The more time you spend to do it clearly, the more efficient it will be. Third step, develop a stewardship and recognition opportunity. So then you'll define, okay, for all these categories, when we receive the money, for 24 hours later, it's the director that will make a call for everybody who made a big grant, or we will send an email signed by so-and-so and whatever. So you define the types of things you're going to do. And then after you put it into a communication strategy and stewardship matrix, which we can see on the next page, which basically is a table which allows you to look at the different steps like acknowledgement, recognition, reporting, ongoing engagement. And then you will basically say the timeline, and then you will have your opportunities. As you see that the ones that are going up those way, those are the opportunities that you've defined that you're going to use to thank the different donors. And not every donor type will be thanked in the same way. The bigger the donation, the more personalized the thank you and recognition is. They need to be planned. So for example, small donations, twice, 3 times in the year, you will, I don't know, maybe 2, or you would send, an email out to small donations, I'm confusing, an email out recognizing what they do and a tax receipt, and basically that's sufficient. For example, anybody who's maybe given small donations for 10, 15 years, you've seen that, you'd say, hey, now that they've done 10 years, I'm going to do a special thank you letter or something like that. So it's about thinking about it, planning, and using your time efficiently. So yeah, we sort of rushed through that, but if you will have this information, I think we've come to the end of the time. I don't know whether we've got another 5 minutes. If you have a few questions, 5-10 minutes. I don't know, Anna and Danielle, shall we?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we could take a few questions if anybody has any, or remarks, or perhaps we can come back to the challenges you mentioned, refer back to those. Okay. So if I may, I'll start with Alex. If I remember, you were talking about generating your own revenue and perhaps, shifting up to 100% funding. Where do you stand with that today? After the
Well, I guess so. I think it was was it somebody in here who also does a bit of consulting. Was it you, Joel? I'm not quite sure. So we do a little bit of consulting, but ultimately we would love to set up a training and education centre and use that as a source of revenue. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like we've got a while to go and it's probably not going to be achievable within 5 years. but yeah, I think it's still possible to generate income. I guess then the trickier question is, if we are working as consultants, then how does that impact the organisation? That's a bigger question, and that's kind of out of the scope of probably this today. Yeah.
Perhaps if I may add, looking at a full strategy would make sense for your organization, because the revenue would be one of the elements. It would be one of your revenue segments. So you would put it within the fundraising strategy, funding model, we should call it,
Yes.
basically, and see the feasibility of generating. How much do you think you generate? And then it's about having a budget that includes the amount of money you think you can generate, how many clients, how many, and you know, it's this whole reflection process. We work with the clients to sort of work on a matrix of, for each segment, really, you know, how much time do you have, what resources, who can help, where are you going to find your audience, and all of that. It's really delving in to see what is feasible, putting amounts next to it, and then after you'll see in 5 years what is possible.
That's very useful.
Emily, do you want to add anything? There was Julia that was also talking about an active fundraising plan. Do you have any questions or any further points that you'd like us to address?
No, I think that a lot of the things that you touched upon today will go towards like giving us some pointers as to how we may go about doing that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Danielle?
I would say perhaps, yeah, I would say in any case, I mean, I think we should be closing soon because a number of people need to leave. But what I would suggest is, anyway, Anand and me will be sending everybody the slides after this presentation, and the recording as well. You can watch the recording, or your colleagues who are not able to watch, so you want to come back to some points. And you can also book a call as part of the one-to-one opportunity we have with Abena and Emily, and you'll be getting information on how to do that just after the call. So you can always explore these specific questions relating to your organization after the call with them specifically.
Okay,
you know, within a 1 hour call should be quite comfortable.
Very well.
I think that's it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Danielle and Anna, for inviting us here. Thank you all for contributing, and it's great to get to know you, and we're wishing you a lot of luck. It's not easy, but I'm sure you're all doing a great job, and sticking together, we try and remain as a community to mutually help each other. That also is great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yeah, looking
Thank you,
forward.
organizers.
Everyone.
We're looking forward to your
Thanks,
place,
Abena.
Alex. Then, no? All right, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Okay,
day.
also you too.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Abena.